Hi there, I'm Patrick Donegan with Hard Stance, and I'm here with Craig Labovitz. Craig is head of technology at Nokia Deepfield. How you doing, Craig? Good to see you.
I'm doing fine, thank you.
And we're here to talk about the new Global DDoS Threat Alliance that Nokia has come up with. Before we do go into that, we're going to spend most of the time on that. Craig, if you would, a little bit of a background, a reminder for those who aren't familiar, what does Nokia offer the telco community in terms of a DDoS protection portfolio?
Certainly. So going back several years, Nokia in 2017-18 came out with our FP4, later FP5 chips, wherein our SR routers had built-in DDoS hardware, the ability to block very large attacks very quickly and support all the telemetry directly in the routers. Deepfield brings software that can help manage, detect, and control attacks. In 2018, we came out with the ability to leverage both Nokia as well as other routers to block DDoS attacks directly on the edge. Last summer, or this previous summer, we came out with the DMS Ace, which is a Nokia SR platform dedicated, focused on providing not just edge detection on the edge of the network, but allowing diversion and off-ramp in a scrubbing center, basically directly competitive with most of the other scrubbing center vendors today.
Right. Very good. Okay, so you announced a few weeks ago, or I came across a couple of weeks ago, the Global DDoS Threat Alliance, and I looked at that and I thought that sounds extraordinarily cool. Why don't you tell us what it is?
Certainly. So the GDTA, for short, I won't keep repeating the long name,
Right.
is a voluntary opt-in program built into the Deepfield software for providers to share information about types, manner, degree of attacks that they're seeing in their networks. The information is largely used to improve some of our base detection mitigation mechanisms. So, for example, detecting botnets can be a challenge. Often during DDoS attacks, you'll see tens of thousands of botnets attacking you. The knowledge of those botnets and the type of devices that are attacking is very important information that can be used to have both better quality as well as faster mitigation when those devices are seen again in other attacks.
Okay. But here's something I want to understand because I refuse to believe, and I'm sure you'll recognize this. I cannot believe that at this point in time today, before the GTDA, I can't believe that Nokia hasn't been using information intelligence from multiple accounts to benefit telco customers. So it seems to me that at some level, Nokia customers benefiting from your DDoS portfolio must be getting a kind of at least a kind of bronze or silver level of threat intelligence informed capability from the Nokia portfolio. So what I would be interested in understanding is what is the distinction then between the kind of bronze and silver that folks are already getting, which I assume they are, and this kind of gold level that comes from the Global DDoS Threat Alliance?
Yeah, so I think that's a misconception.
Okay.
GDTA doesn't have different tiers. There's just one program, and it's the same for all customers. On the service side, like all other vendors, we do have different levels of service, but that is somewhat independent, unrelated to the GDTA.
Well, it's right, but it's fine. It's unrelated to GTDA. But what then is GTDA giving me that I'm not already getting from the from Nokia's DDoS protection portfolio? That's what's that premium? Maybe it's not a price thing, but what is the extra that GTDA is giving me that I'm not already getting from Nokia as a customer?
Certainly. So today, programs like this or information sharing can be very ad hoc. A
Hmm.
customer can call and say this attack wasn't mitigated as well, or another vendor missed this attack. So there's definitely information flowing today
Right.
about attacks and the success. The challenge is that information is often ad hoc. It varies in the quality of that information. It varies in the difficulty of obtaining that information, i.e., if another vendor missed or if attacks were not fully mitigated. So GDTA, I think, first and foremost, for our customers provides a way of improving, not just for everyone, but in self-interest for their own, for the quality, speed, efficiency of the mitigation for events that they see. And it provides a framework where, they could call us up, they could all sorts of ad hoc mechanisms. But this is a way that ensures the privacy, regulatory, all of the other requirements to begin sharing information, not about anything in their network per se, but about the external threats that they are encountering in the space of the attacks they're seeing throughout a given day or a given week. So
Right.
number one, it's really about improving for your network. It's about improving it for other people's as part of a community of security professionals sharing that level of information.
Yeah. You'll know far better than I how wary telcos are of sharing threat intel with one another. What are those what are those barriers as you see them? Can you break them down into like two how does that actually break down as a systemic problem? And what is it about the structure of GTDA as you see it that will help lower those barriers and make people more confident to go ahead and share more than they're doing currently?
Certainly. So, as I said, there is a lot of information sharing today at industry forums, at groups, a lot of bilateral one-on-one conversations. The challenge is doing anything at scale other than one-to-one conversations. So I think GDTA provides a secure opt-in framework to share information, ensuring it, again, meets regulatory privacy rules through a trusted, in this case, Nokia intermediary. And the data is very specific. Oftentimes, different vendors will use different terms, measure tax in different ways, look at different fields. So it's also very specific, very normalized data that allows us to take actionable improvements, both in a manual and an automated fashion. So again, it really is providing the framework to have this type of information scale. As providers go from dozens to thousands of attacks per day, it really is a process of getting ahead, particularly of things like botnet and proxy networks, understanding where these are, what types of devices are being compromised. Again, it's all about speed as well, staying ahead of the attackers.
Yeah. But another aspect of this that you'll recognize, you've described it as a kind of a sharing framework. You'll also recognize that there are actually quite a lot of these at the national level, at the regional level, at the global level. Vendors have their own. Your old buddies at Arbor, now NetScout, Israeli outfit called Flowsec. They're all doing these types of things. There are multiple of these. There's the first responders group that shares a lot of threat intel here. So there are kind of multiple frameworks. How does the Global DDoS Threat Alliance how does it just differentiate itself or consolidate across all those? And as a telco, I'm already probably involved in three or four, maybe considering a fifth. This comes up as a sixth. Why am I going to want to make that commitment to this one as well?
Yeah, sure. So there's no shortage of vendors in the security space. There's no shortage of vendor organizations in the security space, as you referenced. But I think the difference is really as you go from general to the specific. At general, high-level trends, different federal, different regional, different EU organizations will share information at a very high level about very broad trends and recommendations. And that is useful. We provide a little bit of that, but I don't think that is the entirety or even our main focus. We are very specifically looking today at the types of DDoS threats impacting infrastructure and enterprise, and particularly actionable information. Again, typically about the bots and residential proxies that are increasingly being used as DDoS evolves from what had been rather simplistic attacks going back over the last 3 decades. So again, it really is, while we are interested in very broad and high-level trends, I think we are equally interested in very specific ability with secure genome to inform our detection and mitigation mechanisms both in terms of the quality, accuracy, certainly speed and efficiency.
And is GDTA something that, in your mind, inevitably, at least for the medium term, remains a kind of a Nokia-driven kind of competitive differentiator in the market? Or is there some, sunlit uplands in the future where, different vendors actually converge around and share the same framework across one another?
Yeah, so I think we're certainly open to things that both benefit Nokia and benefit the overall security community.
Right.
Today, we're largely focused on data and information, again, typically botnets and proxies that we can leverage within our product. I think other vendors typically have other sort of detection mitigation mechanisms that are different and have different goals and different aims. But certainly, we have ongoing discussions on how we can share this information. We are making sets of this information available to our given customers, so it's not just built in and hidden, but some of that information does become available to participants. And largely where we see the sharing happening today is not necessarily with other vendors, but typically in the carrier space, all of the large ones certainly have their own security teams. And this type of information to be leveraged within their existing data analysis and security teams is certainly starting to happen today and is one piece of a very valuable information pie.
Right, right, right. Last question then. I noticed that when looking at GDTA on the Nokia website, GDTA has its kind of privacy notice kind of pinned up on the Nokia website, and it's a notice that one assumes is aimed at your customers' customers, but it's kind of hung up on the Nokia website, and I found myself thinking, well. What use is the having the privacy notice up on the Nokia website when the end users of the services aren't really going to be looking for it there? So, what purpose does it serve hosting it there?
Well, ultimately, privacy is transitive. So our providers have obligations to their customers who may even have customers of their own. So I think it's important to have in explicit terms what type of information are we collecting? How does it relate to current both regulatory as well as different commercial privacy concerns and information that can be shared throughout the transitive security pipeline. So again, our providers need to be sure and if asked, need to be able to explain to their customers and need to explain to their customers. So I do think everything starts with what is ultimately the end user who owns their data and all the way up to, Nokia being able to explain what the data is and how it's shared.
So it's something that could, in theory, an end user asking their provider what this is all about, they would then refer them to the Nokia site, for example.
That's the goal. And again, it's just transparency.
Right.
With this type of information, again, privacy is first and foremost, both in the EU and certainly other regions, and being able to be transparent to all levels, explain what we're doing, why we're doing, and explicitly what type of information is collected, how it's controlled, how it's shared.
Right. Well, it sounds like a very interesting initiative, Craig. Glad to hear of it getting off the ground. I wish you good luck with it and hope folks take an interest and commit. Great chatting with you today.
Well, thank you. Thanks for chatting as well.